that we're back home, we've had time to reflect on our very first adventure in the Bahamas. We discovered that experience is a wonderful teacher. So this episode is all about what we learned.
Welcome back, everyone. It's now October and we're at the beginning of year 2 of cruising. Wow. This is what we've learned for the first year of cruising, so we put together a little bit of a script so we wouldn't forget anything. So please bear with us if it looks like we're going to be reading a little bit. Maybe it's because we are.
Yeah. And please ignore Sherman in the background. He was out playing with a new friend here in Indiantown Marina. So we wanted to get this video done. And that's his 2 cents in the video too.
So he's huffing and puffing. So we're in beautiful Florida, Indiantown,
yeah,
where the Sea Warrior is resting in peace. Well, she's resting. So we are about to begin this new adventure of getting her all cleaned up, ready to go. Kate's already got some pictures of what it looks like inside, and oh my god, the summer has not been good for the Sea Warrior. Not sure how we're gonna deal with that, but
we'll deal with it.
We'll figure it out.
Let's let everybody know what our experiences were, and understanding that everyone's experiences are their own. But we just thought we'd go through some of the experiences we had doing sailing our first year in the Bahamas. To begin with, our journey started off really strange because of the border closures, because the COVID-19, the only way you could get across the border was to fly, or, well, it was to fly.
No, that was the only way you could get to the States is to fly.
We were so excited to get to the Bahamas, we decided to have our boat shipped, which is what we did.
Thanks to some really good friends that one over a cocktail or two said, ship your boat, because by the time the borders would open, the Erie Barge Canal would have been closed.
So we wouldn't have been able to start our journey last year.
Spend the money to ship our boat, or spend the money that we would have used anyway to live in Canada, because we had no place to live, so we would have had to waste that all on rental. Thanks, Jackie and Roger. It was good advice. We researched and found a really great guy, Sean from, I don't know if we're allowed to say this, but Andrews Trucking.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
And he was fantastic. The company took us, and all said and done, it was like just under $5,000 to ship our boat from Port Dover to Annapolis, Maryland.
Having the boat shipped saved us some time, but because we were new to cruising and we were so excited to get to the Bahamas, we did create some strict timelines. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but setting a strict schedule for us anyway, it really didn't work.
Timelines don't work. We were supposed to meet our son, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but yeah, it's...
I think one of the biggest lessons that we learned, especially with sailing, is to expect the unexpected. We were ready to go. We had the boat all ship-shape, so we thought. But I think the biggest thing that you have to remember, you have to consider all the variables when you're sailing. Your boat, the crew, weather, winds, waves, tides.
All new for us that come out of the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry. Wind, yeah.
Waves.
But waves, yeah. Currents and tides.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're living up a river, you have to worry about the currents. Yeah. So I'll give those people that dock their boats in the Great Lakes, live up a river, some credit, because you might have a little bit more experience. But from Port Dover, Ontario, not so much.
Not so much. I think the biggest thing for us was to remember, whatever can go wrong,
it will go wrong.
And I think also on top of that, of things that can go wrong, Mother Nature's always going to add her 2 cents into the equation as well.
Every time.
Every time.
doesn't matter what the equation is.
Yeah.
It will. She will have her say.
Yeah, Mike, I think, briefly touched on it just a little minute ago, or a couple of minutes ago. Devin, our son,
Who generously volunteered,
Yep.
voluntold, however you want to put it, flew to Norfolk, when we were there, Norfolk, Virginia, and met up with us, and he was excited to go to the Bahamas.
Yeah, so in all that excitement, between our excitement and his excitement, we created an ambitious timeline of getting to the Bahamas. And that timeline was 800 nautical miles, and we gave ourselves 2 weeks to do it. Yeah, 2 weeks. Well, guess what? That is way easier said than done. Weather, repairs, what else?
Just boat disasters, waves, currents,
Yeah, tides.
falling overboard, almost falling overboard, but
And again, I think we said it before, you need to expect the unexpected.
oh, did we mention that you need to remember to expect the unexpected? But
Yeah.
anyway, things will always go amok, no matter what
Yeah.
your best plans are, unless you got like a professional crew that's on board your boat, looking after all the intricate
Yeah.
details. But so you need to be somewhat prepared for all the things that actually do go to hell west and crooked at some point. We ended up with a broken bulkhead. We had our freshwater tank burst. I don't know if that's just because of the age of the tank, or if it was because we had it full and the force of the action inside the tank and the baffles, it just was too much for the tank. But anyway, we ended up with no freshwater fuel, because I don't know when the last time fuel tank was cleaned, but the seas that we had were pretty rough, so everything got shaken up and moved around, and created a brief period of
Holy shit, or holy poop.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, one of those moments. Right off at the beginning of our journey, the shaft seal, we just
Oh
started.
yeah.
We had just started, just left Annapolis. Not even got, an hour? Maybe 2 hours. Maybe 2 hours outside of Annapolis, and shaft seal broke, so we had to go
Just
back.
doing a random check, so good point to remember. Just a habit that I always had is do your rounds and do your engine checks. And happened to find, I heard water, and I'm like, where's this water coming from? And with further investigation, found out that our shaft seal was leaking, and it was pretty significant. So very uncomfortable with that. So back to Annapolis we went.
Start over.
Start over. Shaft seal replaced, and yeah,
Back on our way again.
back on our way again.
Yeah. And I think the other things that for us were little after that, little but not so little, because it was the batteries, the broken steerage, the alternator, dead generator. Was there any more? I don't know if there was. The broken aerial, the radar arch.
Oh,
I mean, so the list goes on. So I guess from our perspective, it doesn't matter how prepared you think you are when you're cruising. Things are going to go wrong, so expect it. I guess the next thing in expecting things to go wrong, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the things going wrong, is money. You always hear, buy a sailboat, save money, wind is free. Despite what most people think, sailing isn't free.
not free at all.
I think for us, we were prepared. We had funds set aside for food, fuel, entertainment, drinks, had to have your beer, going to the rum, and the basic necessities of life. But I think what also you need to consider is having contingency plans.
Right? Yep. Contingency plans for these things that will go wrong. Whether it's a new boat, an older boat, a very old boat, you will have things go wrong. And we had a really good contingency plan that really stressed it over the time that we were cruising.
The things that you take for granted sailing on the Great Lakes, the less wear and tear you have on your boat because you're only sailing part of the season. With us, we sailed in the summer and then continued to sail on even past the summer and didn't put the boat away and give it a rest. So the wear and tear on the boat from the wind, the water, the salt.
There's this common phrase, sail life or salt life. Yeah, every time I see that sign, it just makes me cringe. I got salt life. I have a few other words that starts with an F and ends with a K, but
you can't say it on
cannot say it on
YouTube.
On the YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, salt gets everywhere. In your clothes, all over your boat, everything.
Everywhere. Yeah.
In your it's crazy.
And I think the other thing that you have to take into consideration in your contingency planning is like replacement parts. For having a boat that's nearly 30 years old, you know things are going to break down, so you expect it. There are other things that you have to purchase that you don't realize, because in Canada we don't need to. We had to get a permit, an over 30-foot permit, to cruise in the U.S. waters. License, cruising permit, fishing licenses, dock-jet marinas, pump outs if you don't have a macerator, which we don't have a macerator.
Oh, we do. It's just uninstalled.
But we have the vacuum flush, so it's MacGyvering it to make it so it goes overboard. Those are just some of the things that you have to think of when you're cruising, the things you don't think of when you're at home, because you rely on it. I think the biggest thing for us that was learning was water. How precious fresh water is. When you're cruising in the Bahamas or in the Caribbean especially, you have to account for that because water isn't free. And I guess despite all our planning, everything that we did, you know, there's always going to be something that you forget. And if it is, well, I guess so be it. You carry on, right? It's like, oops.
You pay the cost up front when you realize what you forgot, and then sometimes that can be an additional cost that was unexpected.
Yeah. We chose to travel with a pet. A lot of cruisers do travel with pets.
Yeah.
Which is nice to see. And we did find that no matter who it was, who we ran into, for most of the pet owners, it didn't matter how much work your pet was worth or how much that you had to do, it was worth it to take your pet with you. So we found it worth it doing the extra work for Sherman.
For us, honestly, it wasn't a whole lot of work. I mean, for those of you that know Sherman, he's a pretty easy guy. Yeah. Kind of like us, pretty easy.
Pretty easy. We will make a shout out to Wellington's Pet Service in Nassau. We've used him twice now. Fantastic service. So if you ever have to travel to the Bahamas and you have a pet, well worth to reach out to Wellington Saunders and use his service in Nassau, and you get your pet permit back in no time. You could do the pet service yourself, but it's lengthy, it takes longer, and we just found that his service was easy and fast. On a side note, I think the biggest thing that as cruisers, do your research before you start traveling in the Caribbean, Bahamas, or wherever it is, because some countries have breed restrictions and they won't allow your pet entry. So good thing that we did do that, because if we had headed out from the Bahamas on our 2-year adventure and we went to the Turks and Caicos, we wouldn't have been allowed at the Turks and Caicos because Sherman is a restricted breed. So be very aware of that if you are traveling in the Caribbean and you want to take your pet somewhere.
Something else that our vet said from Florida was that if you were going to go to the Dominican Republic, your pet would eventually, when you went to another U.S. country or
State or island or U.S. Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico.
they would not be allowed in
Yeah,
if it's been under 6 months, because
of rabies.
apparently rabies is running rampant in the DR. So
If you have a pet, do your research and know where your pet can and can't go and where you can come back to after you've taken your pet to a certain country. As Mike stated before, traveling with Sherman was really, really easy. I mean, we got him when he was a puppy, so we thought we did our work ahead of time. So a huge lesson for us was
he wouldn't do his business on the boat. We're 4 days in on a cruise,
going around
And
Hatteras.
going around Hatteras, and he's looking at us with
Big
I think
saucer
his eyes were crossing because he had to go so bad and he
Yeah.
would not go despite our best
Yeah.
opera, or whatever we could do. We'd walk him up and down on the side decks, and he would not go until like he couldn't hold it anymore. Impossible to hold it anymore. And the look on his face was just, oh my God. But
this is my home. I'm peeing in my home. For us, it didn't matter how much training we did when he was a puppy, because the boat is his home. He finds it difficult to do his business on the boat. So that training was a little bit of a waste of time, but we'll work on it this year.
we're starting now. We got a piece of AstroTurf. I don't know if that's gonna help or not. Maybe it's just a total waste of some money, but
We'll give
we
it
got it on the deal from
that Canadian thingy store in Canada.
It's sometimes known as the man store.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got it for him. We found that traveling in the U.S. and in the Bahamas, pretty much it's really dog friendly, and so it was easy peasy for us. There were a few occasions that we had to leave Sherman on the boat. We were at anchor, we'd have to go get groceries. At dock, not so bad. But what we found that when we were anchoring, we left the top hatch open for him, because thinking if the boat ever sank, Sherman had to have an escape route. How could he get out of the boat? So these are things that you don't think of, when you're in a trailer like we are now, because you have access to
Our
grass.
land yacht.
Our land yacht, you have access to outside. But when you are not where you can let them get out in the case of an emergency, you have to think of that as well. So I guess basically things that we think of living on land, having a pet, you have to rethink when you are living on the water. That brings us to, which is the next one?
No, our next lesson.
Yes.
Sailing on the big water. People say that if you sail on lake or the Great Lakes, you can sail anywhere. I call BS.
You may have experienced sailing on the Great Lakes.
Yeah, it might be
Yeah.
pretty rough. Yeah, the ocean has it beat 10 to 1.
I guess for us, no matter what your sailing the experience that we had, because let's face it, we've had a boat since 1994.
Right.
We've been sailing prior to that because your dad made us take sailing lessons.
Right.
So we had an idea of what sailing was like, but we didn't have an idea about what sailing was like on big waters.
The ocean, just to be clear, it's crazy.
Yeah.
People said, the fetches are wider, the frequency of the waves are longer, aka the fetches, but BS.
Yeah, especially in bad weather. We found that the fetch was coming just as fast as it would on the Great Lakes.
Only bigger.
Way bigger. If they tell you it's 2 to 3 meters, well, you estimate more than that, because we found for the most part the waves were slightly bigger than what was usually
probably a meter and a half.
We never really did see any calm flat water when we were sailing. It was because it was always windy. So I guess that brings us to the next weather.
Take some lessons.
Yeah.
Do weather information lessons. Take a course. Weather dictates whether you leave, whether you stay. Fortunately, through my youth and Air Cadets, we took weather in that, and then my son in the Coast Guard, he's taken weather, and he's given us his courses that he's taken. Know where your lows and your high pressure systems are. Be knowledgeable in the weather reports.
They do their best guess at what's going to happen, and then you have to be good at interpreting what that best guess is with the information that you have. So I guess for us, the more we're doing it with the weather, the more we're becoming more in tune, and the more we're able to understand the forecasting and the best weather window for us to sail our boat. But it took some practice, and you know what, it's still going to take more practice, because I'm no expert by any means as far as the weather goes, but the more we the more we do it, the more confident we're going to get.
As confident as you can get at forecasting your weather. Because we all know that the professionals, they're accurate. I'm just going to go rough guess 65% of the time. When they say it's going to be waves under a meter, that means waves under 3 meters. From our experience, which is minimal, where are we at?
Confident sailors.
Yeah, we are confident. We've been sailing, 30 years now.
Yeah, give or take. Because your dad made us take sailing lessons when he bought the boat.
Just big boat sailing.
Okay, yeah, big boat sailing since really '94 when we bought our first boat. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't pretend to understand myself sailing when it comes to the moon, the tides, the currents.
Weather effects,
and that, again, like I said before, we're still learning that. But what we do understand is the information. If you get information from the locals, so the locals tell you not to do something, don't do it. They're the resident experts of the waters around them. Case in point, in Bimini.
The currents were phenomenal. I just can't believe it. And there was some young sailors with
a brand new catamaran.
I think it was a Leopard. The boat was freaking beautiful.
Yeah.
They were there for the weekend. The weather had changed a little bit, and we're up one morning. It was cloudy. It had rained. The winds were kind of really wonky, and
they were kind of unsettled.
We didn't want to go anywhere. Not that we were planning on going anywhere, but this young couple, in all their wisdom,
they had a schedule.
They had a schedule.
They needed to get to the next port, which I think was Highborn.
I don't know.
Anyway, they had to get to their next port.
They were supposed to meet people, and but anyway, we're sitting having our coffee down below, and all of a sudden we see this catamaran literally on our back end, and this catamaran that we're talking about was on a T dock. We were about 3 slips in off of the T, and this boat is literally on our butt. Like, we were worried that they were going to crash into us. Just so as I don't forget, that was a lesson. Make sure your boat is well in from the end of the dock.
So they hit a pylon instead of you.
So they hit a pylon instead of you. I was pretty close to the pylon, so.
But our solar panels were sticking out.
They were sticking out a little bit, so I was worried. So all hands to crash stations, because holy smokes, this boat was going to crash us.
The locals had already told them.
The locals had told them.
So-
Don't go anywhere for another like 3-4 hours till the currents subside.
So yeah, which, you know what, from our point, for what we found, for some boaters, common sense is not always common sense. So for these boaters, they told them not to go anywhere. You would think you would use your common sense to stay where you are. And for us being new to cruising, you know what, there's always going to be something, shouldn't say cruising in bigger waters. There's always going to be something more for us to learn, and we're certainly going to be listening to the locals and what they have to say.
Yeah, and when you're in a spot that's safe, why are you going to risk your boat?
One big lesson that we had to learn was to adopt a minimal lifestyle. With us only having a 36-foot boat, there's a limited amount of space. So I guess you need to decide what's essential to take with you and what you can live without.
Simplify.
Yeah, simplify.
If anybody knows Kate, and a lot of you know her, she is huge into Christmas.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe the stuff that we brought for Christmas. And yeah, it ended up being donated
to the Goodwill just before we left. It was a big box.
It was huge.
It was a big box of Christmas.
We were gonna ship it back to Canada, but it was gonna be like $500 to ship it.
Yeah.
And we went, it's not that important to
Nope,
us.
It isn't. So I guess decide in a minimalistic lifestyle, the things that you can live without. Having to live without, there are also some things we take for granted.
Right?
Being here at home, number one, I think, was water. We turn on the tap.
Yeah.
Turn on the tap, out comes the water. There's an unlimited
Fresh
supply.
drinking water, quality
Dishes.
water.
Or dishes, to have a bath, laundry, whatever it is that you want your fresh water for, you have it. Turn the tap on and off. But in the Bahamas, fresh water is a valuable commodity, so remember that. What's the other thing?
So, if you didn't get this takeaway, get a water maker.
Yeah. Oh, which we did, by the way.
Well, we haven't got it yet, but
Well, it's been
it's been ordered. So
yeah. So we'll have our own fresh water.
we'll talk about that in another episode.
Yeah.
The unboxing of our water maker. It's cool.
The other thing that we take for granted is having access to well-stocked grocery stores, unlimited fresh produce, supplies, boat parts. You just get in your car,
Yeah,
you drive down the street, you go to the store, you pick it up and you buy it.
they get shipments regular from, I'm gonna say the United States, but that may not be accurate. But we found that the produce that's fresh is not that fresh when it comes off the boat, and by the time you hit it like day 3, day 4 from it being on the shelves,
Yeah.
it's looking a little tired. And
Yeah. So access to all the amenities that we take for granted at home may not be so easy access in the islands. Just be forewarned of that.
and it is expensive.
It's expensive, yeah. Which brings us to another lesson that we learned is access to your money, because we're so used to the debit cards, the credit cards. While many establishments in the Bahamas take credit cards, they don't have debit, so you can't use your debit card. And for your debit, there aren't that many bank machines on some of the islands. So having access to cash can be tricky at times. So we finally figured out in the Bahamas we needed to have a small stash of cash for those just in case moments that you didn't have a bank machine, because that one island that we were on, Highbourne, had no bank machines. We had to pay cash for stuff.
And their internet was down, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good thing that we had cash. One of the other things that was difficult for me, I don't know about difficult for you, but it was hard leaving family and friends.
Very difficult.
Very difficult, because when an emergency happens, it's just not that easy just to get in your car and again drive around the corner just to pop in for a visit just to make sure everybody's okay.
And if you're new to the channel, an emergency did happen. And
yeah.
my dad passed away, so and
We were in Nassau.
And we were in Nassau, and so it was very tough.
Yeah, not being there to be a support for his mom was very hard. And I guess a little bit of regret not being at home to bid that final farewell. So these are the things that you have to consider, at least for me.
And me.
The things that you have to consider when you decide that you want to do that cruising and you want to go somewhere, because family's just not around that corner.
But on the bright side, there is always a bright side, and we always have to look at the positives, because caca happens. So the sailing community, the boating community is phenomenal. It is pretty incredible. There's people there to back you up, offer assistance. Our friends Ken and Renda. No, Ben and Renda. Like
Ken and Cheryl.
Ken and Cheryl. We had a busted bulkhead, and Ben was right up there. He says, "You need sandpaper," and like tons of sandpaper. You need sanding machines.
We got a sanding machine.
Yeah.
Ken came in and had a look and kind of gave Mike an idea of what to do, what he would recommend as far as the fixing and our alternator issues, and so the sailing community is huge. Our biggest lesson for the sailing community was right at the start of our adventure when we were down in Port Colborne and found out that the border wasn't opening again, and our disappointment was posted on social media, and how disappointed we were of not being able to start our journey. Jeff and Deb, probably Deb on Facebook,
right,
reached out to us and offered us the opportunity to get to the Bahamas. So again, if it wasn't for that sailing community and if it wasn't for Deb and Jeff, we wouldn't have had this wonderful journey that we had last year and are continuing on in year 2. So it's those friendships that you make cruising great and make it more of a lasting experience. It's absolutely fantastic.
And friendships that are established while you're cruising is incredible.
It almost seems like it's instant friendships, which is fantastic, and people that you stay in contact with, which is great. I think this is the last one. The biggest one for us, and me especially, because this is what we're doing. We're documenting the journey. We're documenting it via film. So document your journey, whether you film it, whether you take photos, whether you create a journal, a blog.
If you take the photos, write things like photo this day was here, and because as good as our memory banks are, and mine's getting older, it's not so good anymore. I forget stuff, but when it's documented, you read it and you go, oh my gosh, it's like going back. Like a time machine, warping you right back to the day that it happened. So it's incredible.
Yeah.
Document everything.
Yeah. So, and I think for us, the biggest thing is if you're thinking or planning to do the journey south, just do it. It's worth it. I don't think you'll have any regrets. We're on year 2. We're going to do it again. we're going to do some more videos of posting of where we've gone, what we're doing, and what goes wrong or doesn't go wrong. And hopefully this time we'll remember to pick up the camera and film so that we get a lot more of our journey. So on behalf of Sherman,
Sherman, he's finally stopped puffing
panting.
and puffing. Sherman, come here. Hey, bud.
You want to come say hi? Hey, Sherman. Hey, buddy.
Come say hi.
Say hi.
There's the Shermanator.
So, on behalf of all of us, thank you very much. And thank you for watching, and I hope you found this helpful.